I sat in the corner of the room, my heart heavy as I watched the typical family reunion unfold around me. The laughter and applause directed at my sister felt like thunderclaps against my chest. Each cheer was a dagger, reminding me of the years I had lived in her shadow, a specter longing for recognition, yet feeling invisible amid the exuberance of the celebration. Family reunions were this strange mix of comfort and torment. The familiar scent of my mother's lasagna wafted through, the air, comforting yet bittersweet, triggering a sense of belonging that somehow felt stifling. My sister stood at the center of attention, radiant and accomplished in her achievements, while I stood off to the side, feeling more like a ghost than a member of the family. The contrast was painful. I felt as if I blended into the faded wallpaper, unseen and unappreciated. When her eyes met mine, she flashed a bright smile, yet it felt more like a polished stone, beautiful yet cold, reminding me of everything I was not. There were moments when the memories would flood my mind, the times I had been overlooked, the whispers of admiration bestowed upon her while I received little more than a passing glance or a sigh of disappointment. The voice inside me echoed relentlessly, "You're not enough. Why can't you be more like her?" It's a tune I grew accustomed to over the years, an incessant mantra that drowned out any sense of personal achievement or self-worth I clung to. It wasn't jealousy that gripped me. It was a yearning for recognition, an insatiable desire to be seen as something more than just a reflection of my sister's accomplishments. As the evening wore on and laughter soared above me, I recalled the way I had learned to deflect my own needs, prioritizing my family's expectations to maintain peace. I stood there, feeling the all-too-familiar confusion wash over me. It was a heavy blanket that clung to me, suffocating and stifling. In the stillness of my thoughts, I softly recited a mantra that I had found in a self-help book. In the darkness of my past, I found the light of my true self. The phrase looped in my head like a refrain from a song, echoing a promise of hope, a flicker of something buried deep within me that longed to be discovered. Finally, a realization began to crystallize in my mind. Why did these feelings persist? Why was I allowing myself to be swallowed by shadows that had long since outstayed their welcome? This evening wasn't merely a reminder of everything I failed to achieve. It was an invitation to confront my own shadows and reclaim my identity. It was as if the universe conspired to nudge me towards a deeper understanding of myself, shattering the walls I had built around my heart. Taking a deep breath, I let the weight of self-questioning settle within me. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding, to embrace the stirrings of hope that flickered in my chest. I realized I was ready to explore the depths of my past, to face the shadows that intertwined with my family's narrative. Little did I know, this simple family reunion would mark the beginning of a profound transformation, one I so desperately needed. In the days following the family reunion, my mind swirled with memories, a kaleidoscope of pain and joy blending together. I felt like a ghost in my own life, the blank pages of my notebook taunting me as I struggled to articulate my feelings. The echoes of my past were insistent, demanding attention until they became impossible to ignore. Flashbacks took me back to the sunlit backyard of my childhood home, where my sister climbed the sturdy branches of the old oak tree. Her laughter would ring out, filling the air with joy while I watched from below, gripped by a suffocating mix of admiration and envy. Why can't I be like her? I would think, as a tightening grip of self-doubt settled in. She was the star, the one who garnered applause, while I felt more like a shadow, an unnoticed specter lurking just outside the spotlight. Our mother's praise for my sister was like a never-ending refrain, with each word cutting deeper into my sense of self. Look at her achievements. It was as if she could only see my sister's potential, while I stood in the background, ignored. Why can't you be more like her, Sophia? I had heard her voice echo through the years, embedding itself within me, steeping my identity in a strong current of inadequacy. I transformed into the good daughter, wearing the badge of honor that had become a double-edged sword. My worth was linked to my sister's successes, and each compliment tossed her way confirmed my hidden fears. Meanwhile, my father sat at the fringes of our family dynamics, emotionally distant and often disengaged. He was like an observer in a world filled with chaos, leaving me yearning for the validation and acceptance I believed he could offer. Together, they created a dynamic in which my self-worth hinged entirely on meeting expectations I had never defined. As I grew older, the narratives my family spun enveloped me. Every choice, what college to attend, what career to pursue, was dictated by what would bring them pride rather than by what I desired. My dreams became footnotes in a story that wasn't mine. I recall moments of false smiles, my spirit muted as I quelled my own aspirations to conform to theirs. The tears I shed were often hidden, articulated through journal entries, as if the ink could help me break free from the suffocating silence. Scribbling was both cathartic and revealing. Words poured onto the pages like streams of consciousness, untangling the knot of emotions that had built up over years. In those pages, I began to acknowledge the shadows I had feared as a child, the unmet desires of my inner self. Gradually, the inner child, the part of me that had been dismissed, rose to the surface, illuminating the wounds I had tucked away for so long. I was beginning to understand just how pervasive the good daughter complex had become. It confined me within walls built of obligation and expectation, stifling my true essence. I was thirsty for acceptance, but I had turned that desire into a prison, shackling myself with my own beliefs. Amidst this painful reflection, the memories were turning into a catalyst for change, a force that was pushing me toward acknowledgement. I saw how this cycle could perpetuate if I remained passive. The acceptance I sought from my family could not come at the price of losing my own identity. I felt a stirring of hope as I allowed myself to believe that, just perhaps, my past could be a canvas for something new. The realization sank in like a stone dropped into still water. I must confront these shadows. Instead of allowing them to define me, I could choose to transform and reclaim my narrative. For the first time, I began to connect the dots between my past experiences and present behavior, giving voice to the things I long buried under layers of fear and doubt. I realized it was time to stop drifting and start embracing the inner changes that were emerging. Perhaps I wasn't altogether alone in my struggles. There were countless others who battled similar shadows of doubt and familial expectations. I considered that my journey could illuminate pathways for others, turning pain into a legacy of resilience and authenticity. As I summoned the courage to acknowledge these truths, I felt empowered to pursue a long-overdue quest for self-discovery and healing. As I pieced together the fragments of my history, a sense of clarity began to crystallize. My family's story would not be the only narrative I followed. It was time to break free from the binds of expectation and step into the light of my true self. Little did I know, this was my turning point, an invitation to navigate my journey, guided by a newfound understanding of my worth and what it truly meant to be me. One fateful afternoon, I found myself nestled in a cozy cafe, surrounded by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It was there that I encountered a book by Carl Jung, its pages brimming with insights that resonated deeply within me. As I began to absorb his thoughts, I felt an undeniable connection to his exploration of the unconscious mind. I was particularly drawn to Jung's concept of the shadow. This idea struck me with ferocity, illuminating the parts of myself I had repressed for so long. The shadow represented the hidden emotions, traits, and desires we disown to maintain a facade of who we believe we should be. As I read, I recognized my long-standing struggle to conform to the role of the good daughter, which served to stifle my true essence. The more I attempted to hide these parts, the louder they became, manifesting in unexpected ways. The phrase, "What you resist persists," rang clear in my mind. My emotional turmoil, the unexpressed yearnings, they were begging for acknowledgement. In this moment of clarity, I realized an urgent truth. Confronting my shadow was the key to releasing the burdens I had carried for too long. If I could bring those hidden aspects to light, I would begin my journey toward liberation. That evening, armed with a newfound sense of purpose, I settled into my favorite writing nook. Turning to my journal, I transformed it into a vessel for exploration. I started to ask difficult questions. digging into the fears that lay behind my need to please others. What had I sacrificed due to family expectations? It was time to voice the silent corners of my heart. The ink flowed freely as I documented the dreams I had buried, especially my love for writing, a passion stifled in favor of fulfilling what others wanted from me. Each word allowed me to reclaim the narrative that had been dominated by the expectations of my family. In acknowledging my desires and unearthing the shame associated with them, I felt a potent shift within. I wasn't just confronting my shadow. I was inviting all the neglected parts of myself back into the fold, weaving them into my identity. Simultaneously, I began to see my mother's aspirations projected onto me. Their weight had become a chain, binding me to her dreams rather than allowing me to define my own. Extracting my worth from her narrative granted me the freedom to explore my identity. I realized that I needed to forge my own path, unconfined by familial expectation. As I dug deeper into Jung's work, I discovered the concept of the inner child. This part of me, once vibrant and full of wonder, had been suppressed under layers of obligation. I envisioned her, the girl who created worlds through storytelling, who took risks without fear. It was this aspect that I longed to reconnect with. My journey necessitated nurturing her, allowing her back into my life to reclaim the dreams I had long neglected. Gradually, I began engaging with activities that invoked joy and creativity, reading beloved childhood books, journaling freely, and giving myself permission to explore without restraint. With each page filled, I fostered a dialogue with that neglected inner child, slowly dismantling the barriers I had built. The realization that I was not merely existing as a reflection of my family's expectations shook me to my core. Instead, I was evolving into my authentic self, with the shadows that once tormented me now emerging as symbols of strength. I began viewing my past not as chains, but as a rich tapestry that informed who I would become. Through Jung's teachings, I felt empowered to confront my fears and acknowledge my desires. It was a long and challenging process, but as I embraced the journey, the process of transformation began to unfold. Rather than letting my past define me, I was learning to integrate those experiences into a narrative that I could own. As I pieced together the fragments of my history, a sense of clarity developed. I understood that my journey encompassed a reclamation of my own agency. Each insight from Jung's work was stitching together the fabric of my identity. I felt empowered, capable of defining my story, now illuminated with a purpose that resonated with authenticity. It was clear that I was ready to explore the deeper layers of my being alongside the painful narratives I had carried. My heart began to feel lighter as the shadows transformed into allies rather than adversaries. Little did I know, this journey into self-exploration would not only change my life, but also emphasize the importance of embracing both light and dark within me. With Jung as my guide, I was poised to step into the next chapter of my life, a journey beckoning me toward reclamation, authenticity, and growth. As the weeks unfolded, I embarked on an emotional excavation, plunging deeper into the heart of my psyche with Jung's teachings as my compass. Every entry in my journal became a stepping stone on a path of self-discovery. I began to confront the shadows lurking within me, the fears I had long avoided, the complexes that shaped my interactions and choices. I was ready to face the aspects of myself that I had pushed aside, the parts that still whispered of pain and unmet needs. With each session of journaling, I found myself examining my life from different angles. I noted the recurring patterns that surfaced, the tendency to agree with others instead of asserting my own needs, the constant self-criticism, and the way I often prioritized pleasing my family over nurturing myself. The good daughter complex had taken root in such a way that I often felt I had to stifle my desires to maintain harmony. As I acknowledged these patterns, I recognized that understanding them was the first step toward reclaiming my true self. One evening, as I sat on my bed, the dim light casting shadows against the walls, I let the emotions wash over me. Today would be the day I confronted the shadow that I had been carrying for so long, parts of myself I had deemed unworthy or undesirable. The activity felt daunting. I lit a candle, closed my eyes, and took several deep breaths to center myself. I visualized my shadow, the aspects of me shrouded in darkness, the ones I feared and dismissed. In this meditative space, I began to converse with my shadow, inviting it out of the depths where it had long resided. "What do you have to tell me?" I whispered. A wave of emotion surged as I envisioned the younger version of myself, the scared girl who yearned to speak up but felt she needed to remain silent. As waves of remorse and compassion enveloped me, tears flowed freely. In that space, I learned that vulnerability was not weakness. It was a source of strength that could release chains I didn't even realize I had been wearing. The whispers of my shadow spoke of repression, of dreams I had kept buried beneath layers of obligation and expectation. I heard the wounds of my unmet aspirations echo back to me. I want to be seen. I want to be heard. In that moment, I realized how much I had neglected this inner child, the part of me that longed for creativity and self-expression, and the part that needed my love and attention. Within this exploration, I encountered another complex that shaped much of my life, the fear of disappointment. Growing up as the good daughter, I had internalized the belief that I was responsible for the happiness of those around me, always striving for approval, driven by a fear that any failure on my part would bring disappointment. It was an exhausting way to live. I recognized the need to unravel this complex, to learn that my worth was not predicated on others' expectations. With each journal entry, I began to articulate these truths. I realized how frequently I had prioritized my family's desires over my own, often unearthing hidden resentment and discomfort. I wrote about my dreams of becoming a published author and how duty and guilt had woven a tapestry that obscured those ambitions. In naming the fear of disappointment, I transformed it from an abstract tormentor into something tangible, something I could confront and dismantle. I dedicated days to creative activities that I had long abandoned, painting, writing, and exploring new forms of expression. Each brushstroke, every word, became a reclamation of my identity, a gift to my inner child who had been waiting patiently for recognition. My confidence began to blossom, and the act of creating became a lifeline, pulling me further from the shadowed corners of my past. Through these creative endeavors, I also could see how my perception of failure had been skewed. I realized that to live authentically meant to embrace both successes and setbacks, to permit myself to be human. The stories I had created as a child now served as reminders that nothing I produced needed to be perfect. It merely had to be true to me. This understanding allowed me to loosen the grip of self-criticism that had long shadowed my creative spirit. As I continued to navigate this journey, moments of clarity punctuated my path. In therapy, I began articulating my journeys to my therapist, allowing her insights to guide me further down the path of healing. I spoke openly about my emotions, my fears, and how the complexities intertwined to build a narrative I wished to break free from. With her support, I identified areas where I could set healthier boundaries, redefining how I engaged with my family, which felt both daunting and liberating. Each revelation beckoned me to release the past that no longer served me. Instead of being held hostage by the scripts ingrained in me, I began to draft my own. The shadows that had whispered feelings of inadequacy transformed into loyal companions. They held valuable lessons, reminding me that I could carry my wounds with dignity, each scar a testament to my survival and my resilience. By the end of this phase of introspection, I had created a vivid tapestry of emotions, vulnerabilities, and strengths. These were not merely aspects to be acknowledged, but were integral parts of my identity, a collage, representing the full spectrum of my humanity. I began the next chapter of my life emboldened, ready to step forth into a space where I ceased looking for permission from external sources to validate my existence. As I prepared to reclaim my narrative, I welcomed both the light and the shadows, no longer fearing them but embracing them as allies on this journey of self-discovery. Little did I realize, this was my awakening, a profound transformation that would propel me forward into the life I was meant to lead, a life bursting with authenticity, creativity, and genuine connection to myself. As the weeks unfolded, the heaviness of my past began to lift, revealing a sense of lightness and a newfound clarity. I remember one sunny morning when golden light streamed through my window, reflecting off my journal, the constant companion throughout my journey. It became evident to me that this transformation was not a fleeting moment, but the beginning of a profound and lasting change. With Jung's insights and my newfound understanding as my guide, I found myself at a pivotal turning point. I had done the internal work. Now it was time to integrate those insights into my external life. No longer was I the girl who shied away from confrontation or cowered under family expectations. I stood on the brink of a transformation that required courage and the willingness to assert my truth. The first major opportunity to test my resolve came during a family gathering on a warm Sunday afternoon. With feelings of anxiety buzzing beneath the surface, I prepared to face my family once more. My sister would be there, as always, the shining star of our family. It would have been easy to slip back into my old patterns of silence and submission, but there was something different this time. I felt a shift within, an urge to express my authenticity. As I entered the lively living room filled with laughter, I greeted my family, exchanging pleasantries with authentic warmth. Then, those all-important words unfolded in my mind. "You know, I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately." With those words, I felt the attention of my family pivot toward me. It's been transformative. I've realized how often I've hidden behind the need to please everyone, but I'm ready to own my story. The room fell silent, and the weight of my confession hung in the air. I continued, fueled by newfound confidence. I want to pursue my passion for writing and face the fears that have held me back. I've worried about disappointing others, but it's time I prioritize my happiness. Erasing the fear of how my words would be received, I locked eyes with my mother. I could see the mixture of surprise and concern cross her face. "Sophia, are you saying you want to write instead of going into a more stable career?" she asked, bewildered. "Yes, Mom, but it's more than that. It's about reclaiming my voice and my life. I want to share stories that might resonate with others who feel like they are living in shadows." I wasn't looking for validation. I wanted to assert my identity without apology. To my surprise, my sister leaned in and offered a supportive nod. "I think that's great, Sophia. You've always had a talent for writing. I'd love to see what you create." Her unexpected support acted as a balm to my worries, illuminating the possibility of a new dynamic within our family. The conversation continued, filled with varying degrees of support and concern, but I pressed on firmly, exploring my fears and dreams. Each word became a manifestation of my journey toward authenticity, reminding me that growth requires courage and that my happiness matters as much as anyone else's. Later that evening, as I returned home, I reflected on what had transpired. The anticipation of anxiety had transformed into a solid sense of empowerment. I felt lighter, as if I had unburdened myself from chains that had limited my voice for too long. Writing became an act of both celebration and healing. I jotted down my thoughts, cherishing the empowerment of articulating my truth in such a significant way. Moving forward, I focused on integrating my newfound insights into my everyday interactions. I began to prioritize open communication, setting healthier boundaries with my family, while assertively expressing my needs. This newfound resilience allowed me to grow closer to my family, while standing firmly in my own truth. As my journey evolved, I grew bolder in sharing my dreams and aspirations. Each small step I took helped me understand that I could honor my true self without fear of loss. I began accepting invitations to share my writing and even ventured into public readings, showcasing my work to an audience that wasn't just my family. Each moment in front of a supportive crowd transformed my fears of inadequacy into confidence. Yet those doubts still occasionally resurfaced. When they did, I confronted them with the affirmations from my journey, the reminders of my rightful place in the world. I had to remind myself that even setbacks could deepen my understanding of who I was becoming. The act of writing became cathartic and liberating, pushing me toward a bravery I had never expected to find. As I immersed myself in writing, I discovered the importance of sharing my experiences and the impact they could have. I began to reflect on how the narratives of my past shaped my present experiences. This comprehension opened the door to deeper connections with my family and friends, Even difficult conversations became opportunities for growth rather than conflicts. Gradually, the family dynamics shifted. Conversations became more profound and authentic, each moment building bridges instead of walls. I became more intentional in sharing my journey and experiences, inviting dialogue rather than fearing judgment. Taking this step not only allowed me to be true to myself, but created a ripple effect of openness in my relationships. This evolution fostered a culture of mutual respect and understanding. I realized that my path toward authenticity required anchoring myself in compassion and vulnerability, enabling me to forge healthier ties with others. Out of the shadows, I started to feel illuminated. The rewards of living courageously outweighed the fear of stepping into the unknown. As I stood on the precipice of this transformation, I embraced both the light and the shadows, accepting them as integral parts of my identity. The act of reclaiming my narrative emerged as my superpower, a testament to resilience, courage, and authenticity. Little did I realize that this journey was only the beginning of an ongoing process. Each day brought new questions, fresh experiences, and opportunities for growth. I emerged with a renewed sense of purpose, fully alive and ready to explore the vibrant possibilities that lay ahead. I knew I was on the path toward a rich, authentic life, one where I was not merely surviving, but thriving, living boldly, and connecting deeply with others. As the weeks turned into months, I realized that my transformation was not a destination, but an ongoing journey, carved by a series of intentional actions. The awakening within me ignited a desire to actively practice the freedom I had discovered. I knew that true change required commitment, not only in my reflections and writing, but also in how I lived and interacted with the world around me. Mornings became my sanctuary. I dedicated the first hour after waking to writing, letting my thoughts flow freely onto the page. This ritual provided me with a safe space to explore my emotions and navigate the complexities of my life. With each word I penned, I built a stronger relationship with my writing, allowing it to be a reflection of my evolving self. No longer did I seek validation from external sources. I focused on expressing the truths that resided within me. Simultaneously, I sought to expand my creative outlets. I picked up painting, reveling in the way colors danced across the canvas. With every brushstroke, I broke free from the confines of perfectionism and embraced creative exploration. Through this practice, I began to communicate my emotions vividly and authentically, creating art that represented both my struggles and my triumphs. As I immersed myself in these creative endeavors, I also felt compelled to share my experiences with others. I engaged in open conversations with my family and close friends about my journey, wanting them to understand how deeply I had been impacted by the dynamics of our relationships. One afternoon, while cooking alongside my sister, I mustered the courage to share my thoughts. "Can we have a talk?" I asked, my heart racing. "I want to discuss how I've been feeling about our family and what it means for us." Her face reflected surprise and curiosity as I opened up. I shared with her my struggles with identity and how I felt pressure to conform to the expectations that had long shaped my life. To my relief, she listened intently, her demeanor shifting from defensive to understanding. This conversation marked a turning point in our relationship, transforming it into a space where we could both explore our feelings without fear of judgment. With encouragement from this exchange, I decided to have similar discussions with my parents. I took a deep breath and articulated my feelings about our family dynamics, recognizing that confrontation was necessary to pave the way for healing. I expressed my needs with clarity, emphasizing the importance of being true to myself while remaining empathetic to their reactions. Every dialogue became an opportunity for connection, allowing a deeper understanding to blossom within our family dynamics. One memorable evening gathered around the dinner table with my family, I felt compelled to read a piece I had written about the importance of embracing our individual journeys. As I shared my heartfelt words, I could sense the atmosphere shift. Laughter faded into rapt attention, and I could see the recognition in their eyes. It was a beautiful moment, one in which my family understood the significance of my authenticity. The reaction from my family surprised me. They began to share their own stories, moments filled with vulnerability that illuminated their past struggles. In that space of openness, my family built mutual understanding and compassion. It became clear that vulnerability fostered connection, a thread that knitted our experiences together. However, beyond my family, I sought to engage more broadly within my community. I began participating in local writing workshops and storytelling circles, eager to connect with others who would inspire and challenge me. Each gathering became a melting pot of transformative experiences where individuals shared their narratives without barriers. I recognized the power of storytelling, not only for personal expression, but also for fostering a sense of shared humanity. The practice of sharing my experiences evolved into a source of strength. I began to see how every tale had the potential to resonate with others. By articulating my experiences, I offered encouragement and solace to those who may be navigating their paths to authenticity. Through this process, I also learned to set aside time for self-reflection. I integrated mindfulness and meditation into my routine, grounding myself and nurturing my self-awareness. Each moment spent in quietude helped me connect deeply with my emotions, allowing me to approach each situation with grace and intention. This merging of creativity, vulnerability, and community engagement led to a profound emotional liberation. I became adept at recognizing and acknowledging my fears, no longer allowing them to dictate my choices. Instead of ignoring those doubts, I confronted them with courage, understanding they were part of my journey, not defining aspects of who I was. Through this journey, I discovered the beauty of both embracing my light and honoring my shadows. The acceptance of both facets allowed me to weave a richer tapestry of identity. Each entry in my journal and each story shared transformed experiences that once felt fragmented into a cohesive narrative, one filled with resilience and authenticity. At the crossroads of my transformation, I fully embraced the philosophy that authenticity thrives on connection and dialogue. The relationships I nurtured transformed from conditional bonds into deep reservoirs of love and trust. I realized that the practice of freedom involved continual growth and openness, a journey I was committed to for life. With every step I took, I amplified the transformative power within me. I began to live my life not merely as an observer, but as a participant, actively shaping and sharing my story. Little did I realize the journey of self-discovery I was carving was only the beginning. I felt invigorated, ready to embrace the paths ahead and explore the freedom I had worked so hard to reclaim. As I continued forward, I felt reassured that authenticity was not simply an achievement. It was a dynamic practice, an ongoing journey guided by love, creativity, and a commitment to truth. I stood poised to enter the next chapter, ready to face whatever came my way with courage and grace, confident in the resilience of my spirit and the depth of my journey. As I embraced this new chapter in my life, I realized that my journey toward authenticity was about more than just personal growth. It was about the impact I could have on others. With each passing day, I became increasingly aware that I was not merely a spectator, but an active participant in shaping my story. A story filled with genuine connection and creativity. Writing continued to be a vital outlet for exploration and expression. I committed to sharing my experiences, reflecting on how the narratives of my past shaped my present. This commitment opened the door to deeper connections with family and friends, transforming what could have been difficult conversations into powerful opportunities for growth. Engaging in open dialogue with my loved ones became a transformative practice. One evening, while cooking with my sister, I felt an urge to share my journey. "Can we talk?" I asked, feeling a mix of vulnerability and determination. "I want to discuss how I've been feeling about our family dynamics." Her surprising response, curiosity instead of defensiveness, encouraged me. I spoke about my struggles with identity and the pressure of expectations that had shaped my life. For the first time, I felt truly heard, and as I opened up, she shared her own vulnerabilities, revealing the weight of similar expectations. This honesty marked a new chapter in our relationship, building a bridge of understanding between us. Empowered by this experience, I opened up to my parents as well, initiating conversations about our family dynamics. I articulated my needs with clarity and compassion, aiming to foster an environment where we could all express our desires without fear. The dialogues we created became enriching. Experiences filled with resonance and connection, strengthening our bonds and encouraging growth. During one memorable gathering, I decided to read a piece I had written about embracing our individual journeys. As I shared, I could feel the energy in the room shift. My family was captivated, and there was a palpable sense of understanding and recognition in their eyes. To my delight, the ensuing dialogue allowed others to share their own stories, connecting our experiences in ways that felt transformative. My engagement with community initiatives further amplified my sense of purpose. I began participating in local storytelling workshops where I met individuals who longed to express their narratives. Every shared experience became a reminder that we are all shaped by our stories, illuminating the power of vulnerability. Facilitating these storytelling circles helped forge connections that transcended individual struggles, turning shared experiences into acts of collective healing. Self-reflection remained a cornerstone of my journey. I incorporated mindfulness practices into my routine, spending time in quiet reflection to nurture my self-awareness. This allowed me to connect more deeply with my emotions and approach each situation with intention. Through this integration of creativity, vulnerability, and community engagement, I gained profound emotional liberation. I learned to recognize and confront my fears rather than allowing them to dictate my choices. Embracing both my light and shadows became essential to my identity, turning once fragmented experiences into a cohesive narrative filled with resilience. At this moment in my life, I understood the transformative power of authenticity and how it thrived on connection and dialogue. The relationships I nurtured became a tapestry of love and trust, allowing me to explore my identity and that of others around me. As I stood on the cusp of this exhilarating journey, I embraced the belief that I was ready to not just flourish, but to dedicate myself to encouraging others to share their stories as well. Little did I know, this chapter was only the beginning of an ongoing process, one filled with potential and the power to inspire. Now, with a vibrant identity and a renewed spirit, I felt invigorated and fully alive, ready to explore uncharted horizons. Each experience carried the promise of growth and the legacy of healing I aimed to impart. With every step I took, I welcomed the beauty of new beginnings, motivated to live authentically, create connections, and illuminate the path for others walking their journeys.